Okay. Let's start with Parshas Eliezer. We'll see where we'll go from there. I want to say over something that I heard from my father, B'Shem Reb Shneir Kotler Zichron Livracha. My father was very close to him. And I heard it from him when I was in 12th grade, and I was asked to speak Parshas Eliezer. And that drasha has a lot to do with why I speak today. Because I had a Menal who's a legendary Menal, Reb Chaim Siegel Zichron Livracha. And he asked me to speak, and I spoke about Yafes Yichasan Shel Avdei Avos Miterasan Shel Banim. And I can't tell you how I spoke, but when I was done, in front of everyone, he called out, Yosef, Yafes Yichascha. It was like very zis, and he came over to me afterwards and he asked me to speak by a Chanukah Mesiba in front of the whole yeshiva, which was exhilarating and terrifying at the same time, probably more terrifying than exhilarating. But his wisdom and his ava, the way he brought out the kayach in me, was something that I don't forget, and something I'm very makir toiv to him, and something that taught me a lot about what it means to be a mechanech. So that's the hakdama to this. That's the yichus of this vart. Now it has evolved over the years. It's not, I'll tell you the point that Reb Shneir is mechadesh. But let's start with Eliezer. Eliezer Eved Avraham is one of the mysterious people in Chumash Bereshis. Avraham Avinu says, "Avdoi zekan beisai hamoishel b'chol asher loy." In the Mefarshim, if you look around, you'll see the Mefarshim on zekan beisai say gewaldige Sachen about Eliezer, his madrega, his tzidkus, and moishel b'chol asher loy. There's a phrase that he was Moishel b'yitzroi kamoisai. I believe there's a phrase in the Mefarshim that he was Moishel b'tayrasai kamoisai. Eliezer was as comfortable in Avraham Avinu's Torah as Avram. It's an astonishing thing to say about an Eved Kenani. And going back to Parshas Lech Lecha, it's even more surprising because Avraham Avinu complains to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that he doesn't have a ben yoresh. V'hinei ben beisi yoresh oisi, ben meshek beisi hu damesek Eliezer. So he's explaining why Eliezer is not a good yoresh. And his explanation of why Eliezer is not a good yoresh, he calls him damesek Eliezer. One of the things Rashi says, damesek Eliezer, is that damesek is nutrik and doila umashke. That Eliezer was doila umashke mitayras rabbi la'acherim. Would you compliment him that way if you were trying to say why he's not a good yoresh? Is it a little bit odd in the pasuk? He's not a good yoresh. He's doila umashke mitayras rabbi la'acherim. I mean, what would he want from his son if not to be doila umashke mitayras la'acherim? B'chlal, we know this whole Parshas Chayesara, Yafes Yichasan Shel Avdei Avos Miterasan Shel Banim. I don't know about you, but I feel sometimes a little insulted by that statement. I think the Terasan Shel Banim is gar chashuv. What is Yafes Yichasan Shel Avdei Avos Miterasan Shel Banim? Since when are we giving credit to an Eved Kenani that Sichasa is Yafeh more than our Torah? So Reb Shneir said was to be metaretz a Ramban's kasha on the Even Ezra in Parshas Noach. In Parshas Noach, after the Maisa that Chum did, so Noach says his psak on Shem, Chum, and Yafes, and Yaftale kim liyafes v'yishkaim ba'alei Shem v'hi Kenan eved lamoy. That Kenan will be an eved to him. So to Even Ezra, to Shem and to Hashem. Kenan will be an eved to Shem and to Hashem. So the Ramban quotes Balak Melech Tzipar to Bilam and says, Lokov oyevai. You're here to curse. V'hinei beirachta borech. We would all love, wouldn't you love that curse, to be an evet to Hashem and to Shem? What are we trying to do here? We're trying to be Avdei Hashem. That's the curse. Ramban's kasha, v'hinei beirachta borech. So Reb Schneier said that it is a curse. Because the vart of an Eved is that he's less leimi garmei klum. The Eved, what he has is what the Adon gives him. There's nothing coming from him. He's not producing anything. He's not putting his mark on anything. He's not bringing his personality, his tafkid to the table. He's a reflection of his Adon. He's there to be noisei kelov shel Adonai. That's what he's there for. He's there. He's an expansion of the Adon onto his Eved. But there's no mamashas to the Eved himself. And if you're medayik in all of the chazal that I brought, you hear it. It was Moishel b'Tayrasei kamoisei. Nobody ever said a word about Tayrasei shel Eliezer. There's no such a thing. There's no Tayrasei shel Eliezer. Okay, he was Moishel b'Tayras Avraham kamoisei because he did have apparently a tremendous koyach, but the koyach was to shtel tzu to Avraham and to be makabel Avraham, but not to bring of himself to the table at all. That's Avraham's complaint to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ben Meshek Beisai, who da Mesek Eliezer, he's dailo mashke mitayras Rabbi la'acherim. We need avis of Klal Yisrael that each one brings a midah to the table. Avram had his midah, Yitzchak had his midah, Yaakov had his midah, and together they formed this nifladik nation because each one provided and gave and understood his makayim in the Welt and was machadish his chidushim along with being makabel Teiras Aviv. But when there's less leimi garbe klum, that's not a ben, that's an eved. That's how Reb Schneier was masber. It's an unbelievable hezber. And now we understand. Yafasi chasen shel avdei avos. And the Mefarshim say this. Many Mefarshim say this. Yafasi chasen shel avdei avos b'tayrasen shel banim. It's not a compliment to Eliezer. It's nothing to do with Eliezer. It's bringing out the godless of Avraham Avinu. The sun, the moon burns bright. If you look at the moon, it's very, very bright. You say, imagine how bright the sun is. If you can't look at the sun, but you could chap, if the moon is only a reflection of the sun, imagine how bright the sun is. Yafasi chasen shel avdei avos mitayrasen shel banim. The clay kibul of Tayras Avram, it wasn't even Avram Avinu himself, was Yaiser mitayrasen shel banim. It brings out the godless of Avram Avinu. Sfas Emes says mefurish, it's to bring out, it's to show the godless of Avram. It's nothing to do with Eliezer. Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer says that Eliezer went off and became Oig Melech HaBashan. There's no Eliezer. We don't have a Messiah from Eliezer. Eliezer is the clay kibul of Avram. When he was with Avram, he held strong. When he wasn't with Avram, we don't hear from him again. I know there's different chazal, and Avram was meshacher him, whatever, but it explains also why the chazal tell us, Rashi brings, that Eliezer asked that maybe his daughter could marry Yitzchak, and Avram Avinu said, B'ni baruch ve'ata orur, ve'in orur mizdabik bebaruch. What orur is that? V'hikanan eved lamai. Now, B'ni baruch, my son, he's baruch. Baruch is someone who's filled up and spilling over. That's baruch. A bracha is something that's malay, and memela it's mashpia because of how malay it is. I brought my son to my Rosh Yeshiva 2 years ago. I brought him to Eretz Yisrael, and he had been going through a difficult time. And my Rosh Yeshiva was schmoozing with him, and he asked him what he wants to do when he gets older. And he said he wants to be a Rebbe. And now he's a Rebbe in the preschool. He said he wants to be a Rebbe. I think my Rosh Yeshiva has something to do with it. I don't mean practically, I mean that he davened. So he said to my son, you want to be a Rebbe? Let me tell you how you be a Rebbe. Pshat in a Rebbe is that you fill yourself up with Torah so much that it spills out around the people around you. That's a Rebbe. But that's this vart. That's Baruch. That's B'ni Baruch. V'ata Ora, you're a vacuum. You're incredible, but you're a vacuum. So ein orim is dabik bebarach. So this is a big responsibility, because we're all bruchem atem l'Hashem oiseh shamayim va'aretz. We're all, we're the Bnei Yisrael are all bruchem, and each one of us has our contribution to make to Klal Yisrael. Each one of us has our contribution to make until the Gula Asida. We have work to do, and each one of us has to try to be mevarer to ourselves. What's me? What do I bring to the table? What's my unique role? Where do I fit in? And it's not a free-for-all. It's not like it's a blank canvas and we just could fill it however we want. To be a person who's mekayim his tafkid, that means we have to be oymid on what tzir b'shamayim the Rebbeinu Shalom has for us, and to try to match that tzir. That was the chiddush that we'll see in a few weeks. V'hinei malachi elikim oilam v'yardim by. That Chazal say that they saw that the Gemara says that the tzura of Yaakov Avinu was chakuk on the kisei hakavod, and the malachim were going up and down, being matmiya that this person that's sleeping down here, his tzura is on the kisei hakavod. And I don't have to speak out that malachim are not looking for amusement. If the malachim are oilim v'yardim by, it has something to do with this, that they are malachim. It has something to do with their job. What are they doing? Oilim v'yardim by, they're being matmiya. What does this mean even? And b'chlal, we know the kisei hakavod is not a chair. It represents something. It's a hasaga ruchnis. So what does it mean that Yaakov Avinu's tzura is chakuk there? What does that mean? The pshat is that malachim represent kavod shamayim. The malachim are always pushing for kavod shamayim. A lot of things you see about malachim, if you have this yesod, you can understand better. The malachim are standing up for kavod shamayim. They're the entourage of the melech. HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes to Har Sinai with river voice, malachim, degalim. That's kvaydai shal hamelech. And the kisei hakavod, whatever it is above my pay grade, but I know one thing about it for sure, is that it has something to do with kavod. It's the kisei hakavod. And somehow it represents the way to bring kavod to the Rebbeinu Shalom. Right? I'm just reading the word. The kisei hakavod. And if the tzura of Yaakov Avinu is chakuk on the kisei hakavod, that means that the essence of this person that was going to be Yaakov Avinu was integral to the kavod shamayim that was meant to be brought out in this world. I'm not saying any chidusha, I'm just translating the words that his tzura was chakuk on the kisei hakavod. And if when he was down here, he looked exactly like that tzura, we're not talking about what shape his eyes were. We're talking about the fact that he brought out in himself, he worked on himself to the point that the person he was actually a reflection of the tzir and shamayim of what a Yaakov Avinu was supposed to be. Malachi elikim oilim v'yardim by. That's a big job for us to try to do that, to try to figure that out, because Yaakov Avinu maybe is kailul the whole Klal Yisrael, but in some way there's a tzir b'shamayim, there's a hasaga, there's a goal, there's a tafkid, there's some plan for every one of us, for every one of the neshamas of Klal Yisrael. And our job over a lifetime is to try that the Malachi Elikim should be able to be oilam v'yardim by, that we should somehow match, that we should reach that tzir over a lifetime of work, to be able to reach that tzir. Avraham Avinu, the pella of Avraham Avinu is that he managed to do it on his own. He didn't have any help. He managed on his own, from his own inquiry of his mind, from the sugya that he went through in his mind. He managed to build for himself from being Oved Avodah Zarah. The Rambam says Avraham was Oved Avodah Zarah, right? From being an Oved Avodah Zarah, he worked through that the world must have a boirei. what the tachlis is, what the point of that boirei, what he wants from the world, to understand that boirei. We don't understand Hashem, but we understand his interaction with this world. All the midas of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, all the complexity of what HaKadosh Baruch Hu would want from a Adam in this world, the mitzvahs of the Torah, the D'Rabbanans, every detail until Leruvei Tchumen, Chazal say, Avraham Avinu figures out by understanding the world and the Rabbani Shalom and the Tafkid and the Tachlis, and along with that comes naturally, he became the Av of Chesed, all of that became an understanding of his place in that world. You can't skip that part. That's a big chiddush. Avraham Avinu on his own reached a clarity about his role in this world. It's incredible. We don't have the ability to do that. But we also don't have to do that. Because we have, in some way, we have a little bit more help to ground ourselves and to understand a little bit more what our role is. To figure out each individual, to figure out what's the different roles that we have. That might be a little bit more complex. But our Iker Avodas HaChaim, Tariag Mitzvahs and Avodas Hashem and Yud Gimel Ikrim and the life that we lead, we didn't have to do all kinds of drishas v'chakiros to figure out. We, on our own, we're Yarshim of an incredible Messiah that we can look in the Torah and we can see what our job is. To a tremendous degree of accuracy, we could see what our job is from the Torah. And it's with the Torah that we build our own world. Just like HaKadosh Baruch Hu did that when he created the world. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is histakel v'iraiso bara alma. And we do the same. First of all, in a broad sense, we look at the Torah to understand HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to understand our tafkid, to understand what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants from us. We learn halacha because we have to know what's ha'maisa asher yasin, it's ha'derech yelchu ba, ha'maisa asher yasin. We have to know what we have to do. We learn Agada, Musar, Chumash, so we can understand about who this Bayrei is, Klape us, and what our Messiah is, and what our Kaychas are. Chazal say, if you want to know what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants from you, L'moid Halacha. And if you want to be Makir, Misha Amar V'haya Ha'olam, L'moid Agada. And we have to do both. But the goal is that by making our existence, our starting point, our root, the place we start our journey from, by making that the Torah, that we not only can find out what we have to do and what we believe, but each one of us is able to discover our tafkid, and each one of our individual tafkid, what we're doing here. It's interesting, I had an experience over the last day that brought to my attention what it means for a person to consider his world, the Torah, from which he builds his world. I'm going to tell you two stories, one that happened many years ago and one that happened yesterday. And you may think that I'm telling you cute stories. I don't like cute stories, and I don't tell them. Okay? I'm telling you stories, and then we're going to discuss how not to be fooled into thinking that they're cute stories. There's a famous Maisa that you know about Reb Chaim Shmulevitz, that when he was on the ship going to Shanghai, that he was sitting and learning on the deck of the ship, and someone expressed, "Where are we?" And reportedly, Reb Chaim Shmulevitz said, "Shmaitza Gimel." That's what he was in the middle of learning. Story number one. You've heard this story? Where are we? Shmaitza Gimel. I never considered the importance of this story until yesterday. Yesterday, we took our yeshiva to the Hilton in Stamford for the night. We had a whole retreat with Sidrei Limud and Chizuk and singing, and it was a beautiful retreat. And we had started a few days ago, we started a massive initiative in Landers of technology awareness. And we brought Rabbi Drew to speak from TAG, and we were working very hard. The yeshiva's paying for filters for every single Talmud. You understand what that means? What the investment the yeshiva is making. And we're really trying to, not all of them were brought up in a world that appreciates it. And even, unfortunately, the world that appreciates it, unfortunately, doesn't always appreciate it. And there was a strong, strong push to do it in an intelligent way that the boys will take to it and believe in it, and not just do it now, but make that a mahalach hachayim. And we're heading into uncharted territories with technology. We're going to start talking about the world of AI and so on. The world of technology is not going to be recognizable in 5 years from now. So one of the rabbeim in the yeshiva, his name is Rabbi Eliezer Soloveitchik. He's Rabbi Aaron Soloveitchik's son. He's a big Talmud Chacham, a very humble man. And he got up to speak. He said beautiful things. I wish I had the time to tell you over some of the beautiful, beautiful things that he said. But in the middle, a small little thing happened. In the middle, he started to say, like almost to apologize, that he never owned a computer. When did he get a computer for the first time? During COVID, because he was giving share on a computer. So his wife went out and bought him a computer. That's what he said. And then he's thinking to himself out loud, when was COVID? How many years ago was COVID? So he counts, when was COVID? He goes, Yevamis, Beya, Psachim, Kedushin, Meruba, Shabbos. It was 6 years ago. Meaning we learned these Masechtas in the yeshiva. It's not a cycle. It's not like in some yeshivas, it's a cycle, so you could count years like that. It's not a cycle. Depending on the time and different events in the yeshiva, we learn different things. But his whole world each year was the Masechta we were learning. So when he's counting years, he starts counting. Yevamis, Beya, he's counting backwards. The Rosh Shiva, Rabbi Sachs, and I were sitting by supper, and I said to him, I said, Rosh Shiva, it wasn't the best part of the speech was him counting to COVID. I saw that he was very nisragish also. And then he got up to speak later that night, and he was talking about something, whatever Indian he was, and he couldn't resist. In the middle, he stops, and he's like, did you hear of Soloveitchik count the years back to COVID? And I'm telling you, I was there. This Talmud Chacham, but I could tell you, it was incredible. He knows Shas backwards and forwards by heart. Started crying in front of the yeshiva. What it means that a Yid counts 6 years back by his Masechtas. Okay, it's a very heartwarming story. But what's the vart of the story? The vart is, think about it. You're in the world, you exist in this world. What are the coordinates of where anybody is in this world? I'm in this world. Rabbi Chaim Shmulevitz was in this world. Rabbi Kalish is in this world. What are the coordinates of every single person in this world? So I want to tell you, the coordinates of every single person in this world is when they are and where they are. Right? That's how we position ourselves in the world. Right? If you say someone was sitting in this seat, now obviously it's not now because I'm sitting in the seat now. So you say when. Right? If you say that person's not here, so you say where is he? The coordinates is a very important thing. The coordinates, because it's true, like HaKadosh Baruch Hu created a Kedushas Hazman and Kedushas HaMakom because of that. This world, it's important to chap, our existence, we find ourselves in this world by where we live and when we live. And here I have two stories of people that ki'ilu they perceive themselves, their coordinates, their when they live and where they live are the Torah that they're learning. Isn't that amazing? It's an incredible thing. And it's something that a person can work hard to build. Each person, kafi darkai and kafi ruchai, to be able to build that kind of relationship with Torah that everything starts and ends there. that his limud HaTorah is connected to the way he lives his life and the way he thinks, and it's important to him. He hears a good vart, he has to write it down. I'm saying you're not going to let it go to waste. I'm saying, you're not going to let it go to waste. If two people are talking by davening, and one guy says to the other, there's a website, you could get a free $100 just by signing up for nothing. The guy's going to write down the website, right? When we live, I identify myself. It informs who I am and what I do and how I live. So then that has a certain central makom in my life, no matter where my life leads and no matter who I am. That's how I bring out my bracha. That's how I bring out my b'ni baruch, my bracha, the person that I am, that we started with. There's a Gemara in Shabbos that goes through a very famous, I think Daf Kuf Gimel. Rabbi Yaakov will have to tell us exactly. But the Gemara in Habayna that goes through the Oisius. Is Kuf Gimel accurate? What? Kuf Dalet. Kuf Dalet. Shkoyach. So the Gemara goes through the Oisius. So Mem, there's a Mem Psasum and a Mem Pasuach. Right? There's a closed Mem and an open Mem. So the Gemara says, Maimer Sasum, Maimer Pasuach. It's not so clear exactly what that means. Maimer is an Amira, Maimer Sasum, Maimer Pasuach. So, one of the Gedolei HaMachshava, he explains like this. He says, when we're learning Torah, there's two ways that we learn Torah. This he brings to a very, very far extent, but let's just talk a little bit focused. Sometimes we learn Torah in a very defined way. Like when you're learning halacha. So let's say you're reading a Beis Yosef, and it's a shver Beis Yosef. You don't understand it. So somebody says, I feel that the Beis Yosef is trying to remind us to focus on our bitachon, and that's why he uses that word. The Rosh Kohen will shut you down. Okay, it's like write a poem if you want to. Like right now we're learning halacha. There's a certain maimer sasum, he calls it. There's a certain there are what's the word I'm looking for? There are rules. There are gevulim. There are klolim to how I learn and how I bring out what the Rebbe wants me to do. So, someone will tell you, imagine someone will tell you, I paskin shailas, but I don't look at the Bavli, I look at the Yerushalmi. I think a Yid should always think about Yerushalayim. You'd be like, that's a very nice thought. I don't know if I'm going to ask you a shaila. There's a certain element of maimer sasum, of there's a way, there's a plan. There's a way that we do it. There's a certain way that we think in a clear way. We have kashas and terutzim. We try to think of a vart and try to understand. We'll suggest something. Even the most creative lamdin, the creativity is not going to just float. If it does, then he's not doing a good job. It has to be able to be in the words, right? How many times have all of you, I'm not here, are all of you fighting and one of you says a svara and the other one says that's not what it says, right? That's maimer sasum. It has to be concrete. It has to fit. That's maimer sasum. But there's also maimer pasuach, and that's when you learn lamashal divrei agada. And there, it is more appropriate to with a person who has the background of Torah, of course, and it's not just a whim, but a person with the right background of Torah to open up his heart and to think in a creative way, and to think in a broad-minded way, and to attach it to other things, and to apply it to other areas of life. And that type of approach, there is a makom for that, like the darshanim of old, right? There is a makom for that, like a maimer pasuach, where a person becomes thoughtful and he starts off with a Gemara, but as you see, the Sfarim will do sometimes that you'll have a Gemara, a certain Gemara, and they'll say it's a mashal, and it really represents the different ilamas, or different kinds of people, and when it's when the Gemara talks about, I'm thinking now, I always love that the Gemara talks about, if Elisha's the room that the Isha Ashanamis made for Elisha, the Gemara in Brachas talks about if it was another room on the same floor or it was an attic. Okay, that's an Agada Machlaikis. And the Bali Machshava will say it represents, which the Bali Machshava is not going to say, that it represents the accessibility of a Gadol B'Yisrael. Some Gedolei Yisrael are very accessible. Some Gedolei Yisrael are more removed. Klal Yisrael needs both. The Shaila is what type of Gadol was Elisha, like that type of thing. It's Maimer Pasuach. It's not Pshat in a Beis Yosef. It's more expansive. It's more creative. And in a certain sense, there's a certain element of Maimer Sasum and Maimer Pasuach that affects our lives. And what I mean is that those that explain Maimer Sasum and Maimer Pasuach this way, they have a very, very, very strong azhara, where they say that if you don't properly learn the Maimer Sasum, you will not be mechaven properly to the Maimer Pasuach. And it's a veiled criticism on those that are not Balei Torah, that just take random agadic phrases and just write a whole book about it without being rooted in Torah Shabbat and Torah Shabbat Peh. So there's a little bit of a criticism. Like if you want to be able that the way that your mind thinks and the way that your mind considers things in an expansive, creative way is rooted in emes, you have to have that Maimer Sasum. You have to have that grueling work of building a working knowledge of Torah. And in a sense, that happens personally to us as well, where over a lifetime, if a person works in a healthy way, he starts to get a sense of where he thinks he belongs and what he should be doing and what he should be working on. And it's not something that he could necessarily put into words. Maybe it's a Maimer Pasuach. It's not something you can necessarily, not always. It could be, there are great people that could put everything into words. There are some people, like I worked on this, it's because I realized about my neshama, that it comes from here. I'm not talking about, that's not for us. But for us, just sometimes to have a certain, you see this sometimes, and it's a big bracha. It's a big bracha when a person reaches a point in their life that they're zeicha to that clarity. It's a big bracha. I remember when we moved to Waterbury, so I was penniless before I moved to Waterbury, and moving to Waterbury made me more penniless. But I thought that I was going to have a shefa of money when I got here. I didn't understand how money works, like how much money you need, and what they told us. They told us, "Mamish, like you live in New York, but in Connecticut, it's Mamish costs pennies to live," which was not true. It's not true. They got us here, but it wasn't true. It was very expensive to live, and my wife was in school, and I was in yeshiva, and there were times I had to ask Rabbi Kaufman to give me my check early so I could buy food for Shabbos. And a few weeks ago, we were sitting in the sukkah. It was a few weeks ago, we were sitting in the sukkah. My daughter, my married daughter, Shmuel, Shmuel Ehrman, his wife was there. And she suddenly asks me, and she's known to ask direct, pointed questions. And she says to me, I remember how penniless we were. I remember. And I don't understand. I know how you give advice to people. And you would never give someone advice to live the way we lived. Busted. I don't remember how much I explained to her there in the sukkah. But I'll tell you that my intention was that my plan be'etzim for myself was to be a computer programmer. I think I've shared this before. And my wife was very, 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 very unhappy that I was leaving Koil when I thought I was. And she begged me to push it off a year. And I did. I can't say it took a ton of convincing, but I did it. And then, during that year, Waterbury came up, and I had this Einfall, I'll be able to push it off another year. And then I'll get reality. I wasn't going to even stay in Waterbury. There was no community here. There were 9 families in a Goyish town. I was going to be here for a year and learn for a year, get my $24,000, which I thought was like $240,000, and go back to Brooklyn and become a computer programmer like my father, like my shver. And when I got here, Rabbi Kalish decided, you were here in the beginning, Yaakov? The very beginning? So, I don't know if you remember, many things happened because Rabbi Kalish just banged on the bima and said that they were happening. Right? Much of this community is based on those. I don't know if they were impulsive, but they certainly looked that way. And one thing that he decided, the first Thursday of Yeshiva of Waterbury, was that they were going to be Thursday night chaburas, remember? They're going to be Thursday night chaburas. And I'm going to give a chabura. I never gave a chabura. So I gave a chabura to the Bachram. I had to plan. I had to give. Chabura became very popular. Eventually it was a very big chabura, and we used to go for hours. And then there was Musa Seder, so I don't know who decided the young Light are going to start giving Musa. So each of us took a group of Bachrim, and we started to say Musa. I started giving him Mesilas Yesharim Sheder. I ended up finishing Mesilas Yesharim in Waterbury with Bachrim, I think 3 times. You know, like I was sitting in the back of the Beis Medrash Cotton before it looked anything like the Beis Medrash Cotton. In the back, if you're facing the doors, I was sitting in the back right, and I gave you probably remember I gave them Mesilas Yesharim Shir. And we started to do second Seder also. First Seder was without Charus. The second Seder we learned B'Charus, and we also gave second Seder Chaburas. I started to give a second Seder Chabura, and I started to share with Bachram how to read a Gemara clearly. I don't remember the moment. At some point, I remember where I was. I was driving up Pine Street, about to get onto Columbia. And I just was like, I think I'm where I'm supposed to be. I can't describe to you how it came to that. It was my Maimer Pasuach. I can't explain it. But at a certain point, I just had a certain sense, like, this is the right thing for me. But there's other things in my life that sometimes I wasn't even necessarily so happy. I deal with things outside of the community and outside of yeshiva. I deal with couples that deal with certain very, very, very shver tzrachim. It's a private talent that I have, and people call me from all over the place to deal with this issue. Right now I have like 5 Chassidish couples, and I'm not a therapist. I try to be mechazik and to direct them the right way. And it's Dvarim Shebetzina related things. And it's not comfortable. I'll be honest with you. I'd rather not do it. I really would rather not do it. I'm not getting rich on it, and I don't have time for it, and it takes tremendous kaiches, and it drains me, and I have a job as a Rav in Waterbury, and I have a job as a Manal in Queens, and that alone is 2 full-time jobs, and I don't have time for it. And I bad to want to pattern myself from it. But I know that that's what I'm supposed to be doing. I know. Some of it I've discussed with various Talmidei Chachamim, and some of it is just a conviction that I have. I know that this is what I need to be doing. I mean, look at Eraisa, that somebody from Connecticut just decided to start a program. You know, I'm not trying to. Yaakov doesn't pay me. I'm not. I'm serious. I'm speaking ernst. I'm really. I hope you know me well enough to know I'm speaking ernst. And I don't know what your cheshbainis were, why you thought it was a good idea to start Shas Illuminated or start Eraisa. But I suspect that whatever cheshbainis there are, there's a sense inside of you, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. My vague recollection is that you too had different plans for yourself back in the day. But at a certain point, it was like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I'm not just saying it because most of us ended up in what the Welt calls Klei Kodesh. There are doctors out there that will tell you the same thing, Erlicha doctors. They'll tell you at a certain point, they just realized this is what they're supposed to be doing. And that, I believe, it happens by Goyim also. But by us, It needs to come from Histakel by Raisa Bara Alma. It needs to come because we are rooted in Torah. And I don't know how much I'm rooted in Torah, but I hope that at least there are seeds of my decisions that I made that are built on the fact that I spent years in yeshiva, that I have rabbeim, that are gedalim, that I have a sense of a connection to this. And that's what informs who we are, and that informs how we mechanech our children, and it informs the decisions that we make. And sometimes we're in subtle, difficult places, and we want to call and ask a shayla, but sometimes we can't, and we have to make a call, and we have to hope that our instincts are informed by the sum total of the Torah that we have learned and the hadracha that we have received. That's what we have to hope for. So Eliezer Eved Avraham there's nothing. There's nothing. Les Lemi Garmei Klum. He's a reflection of Avraham Avinu. But we are Bnei Banav Shel Avraham Avinu. We are his grandchildren. And for us, my chizuk and my bracha is that we should, both parts of it, that we should be able to find a way to be so rooted in the Maimer Sasum and Maimer Pasuach of the Torah itself, that we're able to find ourselves in it and have a sense of, and I don't mean that you found a remiss to yourself in Rashi. I mean that it's just a certain sense that you have because this world matters to you. And you want to do what the Beirei Shamayim V'Aretz wants you to do. And of course, collaboration with your wives and with your Das Torah and so on, but to work towards what the Rebbe Shalom wants from us. Sometimes we get put very clearly in a certain situation when there's a nisayon or a challenge, and then we know we're dealing with a certain nisayon and challenge, well, then that's what the Rebbe Shalom wants me to deal with. But in terms of building a future, in terms of yitzira, in terms of being boirei, of creating, HaKadosh Baruch Hu should lead all of us, because I mentioned a few things about myself, but please do not get the mistaken opinion that I have it figured out. I still walk around wondering what's next. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu should lead all of us, that we should be able to be rooted in our Histakel B'Raisa, that we should be able to be Boirei our Olam, and that we should be able to feel confidence that the Olam that we chose to be Boirei is the Olam that's Chakuk on the Kisei HaKavod. Yashikayach.